Zimbabwe's Prime Minister Morgan Tsvangirai and the leader for the democratic change is making his third attempt this week to unseat President Robert Mugabe. Many are hoping that these elections on Wednesday will not end in bloodshed as it happened in 2008. Those polls also led to a power-sharing deal between the MDC and Mugabe's Zanu-PF. Live from Bulawayo, I'm joined by eNCA Group News Editor Ben Said. Ben, good evening. Freedom Square, central Harare, was the site today of the MDC's final push, but there were some issues in getting this rally off the ground in the first place.
Certainly, Aman, good evening. We do know that police, of course, in the lead up to this rally today, had said that they weren't going to provide services at the rally, they weren't going to police it, and therefore they banned the rally. But they overturned that at the last minute, yesterday it was, and said that this MDC rally could go ahead. Tens of thousands of people, perhaps 50, perhaps 60,000, made it to what they've dubbed Freedom Square in Harare to hear Morgan Tsvangirai speak, probably for the last time, certainly for the last time, to such a big audience before Wednesday's vote.
What did he say in this climate where the MDC is already saying these elections will not be free and fair?
We know that there are massive problems with regard to the voters' role in this election. We know that there are big problems with regard to the number of polling stations in this election. The MDC says that there are far too few in areas where it gets a lot of support, and far too many in areas where there are large numbers of Zanu-PF supporters. We know that there are rumours, rather we should say, of ghost voters, large numbers of ghost voters on the voters' roll. But the biggest issue at all is that nobody at this stage outside the ZEC seems to be able to get a look at this voters' roll. The MDC, both factions, have been trying for weeks now to get what they say is due to them in terms of the electoral law, which is a good look at the voters' roll, to see if there are ghost voters on there, to see if people are registered in the districts in which they live, and to see whether this election can be free and fair. The MDC is already crying foul. Morgan Tsvangirai saying that there's no way that the poll can be free and fair, but it's going ahead on Wednesday, and the regional bodies, the likes of SADC and the AU, seem to be reserving judgment until after the vote itself.
If that is the case, in the context of these very real concerns, does it seem like the ZEC is giving this much credence? I mean, you allude to some of the basics that are still missing. It's an issue that we've been talking about in the weeks running up to these elections.
Yeah, very little coming out of the ZEC. You know, there's no apologies, there's no timeline, no time frame as to when the two factions of the MDC may get this voters' roll, when it may be made public. They just seem to be blatantly ignoring what the MDC are saying and going ahead distributing ballot boxes for Wednesday's vote. But of course, you know, it's incredibly important that this is a credible vote at the end of the day, that the will of the people are seen to be respected at least, because this country is unlikely to move forward if this vote is contested. And under this present environment, you'd have to say, it seems as if whichever party loses, they're going to contest that result very heavily.
Yeah, in this, you know, in this context again, Ben, of high contestation, the concerns around possible post-election violence. Give us a sense of what the oversight groups, how they're going to be spread. Those groups commissioned by both SADC and the African Union to keep a watch over these elections and make sure that they go smoothly.
Well, I think that's what opposition parties in this country are looking for. Some of them have said, some members of those parties have said to me, that if the African Union and SADC are looking for incidents of political violence in the lead up to this election, and that alone, then they're probably going to call it free and fair. But they really need to get inside the ZEC, get inside polling stations when the counting is happening, get a sense from polling agents and from both parties whether they're happy with the process, with the way things are being done, and then get into that ZEC centre in central Harare and monitor that vote counting process very closely as the results come in from all around this country. Opposition parties have already admitted that they can't have representatives in every of the more than 9,000 polling stations in this country. They can only get into select areas. So it's going to be critical that the regional bodies, that the observers from SADC in particular, play a very meaningful role this time around.
And with less than 48 hours to go, Ben, before these elections are upon us and in fact upon Zimbabweans, what is the mood inside the Zanu-PF camp?
Well, I think Zanu-PF has been confident from the get-go. They think that they've managed to convince enough Zimbabweans that Robert Mugabe deserves another turn, that they have turned the economy around, and certainly this economy is much improved from 2008. There's no doubt about that. If we think back to those days, hyperinflation was running at something like 231 million%. You needed a wheelbarrow full of cash to go up. There was barely anything on the supermarket shelves, and this country's very much changed since those days. So Zanu-PF is saying, give us another chance. We're going to, we've turned around the agricultural situation. We've turned around the economy of this country. We've still got more work to do. We need to ensure that our indigenization policy continues, that the shares of companies are put into a majority black. There's much more the is saying, and they believe they've done enough to win this election outright.
And there we will leave it. eNCA Group News Editor Ben said on the line to us live for us from Bulawayo.
News that moves. eNCA.com.